And that takes us to the deputation on item 8.4 on the housing emergency. A deputation from Shelter Scotland. And hello. So, you're very welcome. Good morning. I know Alison Watson of old, so you're very welcome here. You have up to 5 minutes to address council, and after that there's a chance for members to ask you questions. So look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks very much for the opportunity. I'm here today because Scotland is in the grip of a housing emergency, and that is devastating lives at a scale in Edinburgh that we don't see in other parts of Scotland. Scotland's capital is really suffering the brunt of the housing emergency. And sadly, every day this dire situation is getting worse, and it's devastating more lives for city's residents. Just to put some figures on that, 3,261 households were assessed as homeless or facing homelessness in the last 12 months, and that's up a staggering 28% on the figures that we saw in the previous 12 months. Of particular concern to Shelter Scotland, nearly 3,000 children are stuck in temporary accommodation. And they're getting stuck there for longer and longer periods of time, sometimes even years. Shelter Scotland's own communities team here in Edinburgh are seeing every day people being failed by a broken system. We're also seeing the council's own frontline staff being let down by that system. Dedicated staff feel like they're unable to do their job, unable to help people, unable to find accommodation for people who've got nowhere else to go. And the official statistics really bear this out. So last year there was 455 cases in Scotland as a whole where a household was accepted as homeless, they should have been offered temporary accommodation and they weren't. And out of those 455 cases, 420 of those were here in Edinburgh. There were also 1,490 cases of a household being placed in temporary accommodation in Edinburgh that was deemed by law to be unsuitable because the council cannot find enough suitable accommodation. Now, behind every one of these statistics is a household, a family experiencing real harm, real hardship. And I just want to talk about a couple of cases that we've seen recently. One was a family where the woman who had 3 teenage children, she was homeless because she'd fled racist abuse. She was being moved from hotel to hotel, forced to sleep in one room with her 3 children, no cooking facilities, and no adaptations in that room, which was relevant because one of her children is a wheelchair user. Now, another family we worked with, a client with 1 child, again placed in a hotel, no cooking facilities again, and also being instructed to use drinking water from the shower. Now, that is not normal. And I don't think we can allow it to become a new normal, these record levels of homelessness, these terrible situations that families find themselves in. But I think it's also about realising that this is a problem that can be fixed. It's not inevitable. In terms of understanding why it's happened, there's been decades of underinvestment in social housing in Edinburgh as well as in the rest of Scotland. That's been exacerbated by impacts of the pandemic, cost of living crisis, etc. The real structural solution is to drive back up the supply of social housing. And I think that is the key structural solution, and that's about making sure that the council can clear that terrible backlog in temporary accommodation, but also make sure that everyone, no matter what their income is, no matter what their status in life, they have the decency of a home that they can afford to live in and in which they and their families can thrive. Now, Shelter Scotland knows that the City of Edinburgh Council needs additional support, needs additional resource to address this challenge. Bluntly, this council has been asked to do more and more with less and less, and we see that. Now, Shelter Scotland will always strive to make sure that there's the most consistent enforcement of housing rights, but we will also publicly continue to argue that local authorities should be properly resourced and fully equipped to make sure that those rights are upheld. Given the unique challenges which this council faces, the extraordinary pressures on an all too limited supply of social homes, we are calling on the council to declare a housing emergency. That's step 1. It's the first step in starting to leverage in the additional support which the local authority needs to drive that lasting change, which we know the council wants to see as much as we do. I think it's also about committing to co-producing a housing emergency action plan, I would argue. And I think that's also about recognising that the people who are trapped in the homelessness system can be resources for you. They can help you understand how to target your resource to make sure that it's making the biggest difference. I think the Housing Emergency Action Plan is also an opportunity to bring together all existing strategies and plans, not to duplicate them, but to double down, to understand where there's barriers and problems that are making those plans not really realise their potential and their promise. It's also about pulling together all the key teams from the council, and it's also about pulling in other partners. Now, Shelter Scotland, along with a number of other key third sector organisations, we stand ready to play our part. There are a number of partners who will work with the council on their Housing Emergency Action Plan. This council can provide the leadership and publicly demonstrate the drive and the determination that people's lives, devastated by the housing emergency, so desperately need in this city. This is Scotland's capital. So it's in declaring a housing emergency, I think the council provide the leadership that residents will want to see and deserve to see, but there's also an opportunity to lead the country on this issue, because Scotland is a country where every 16 minutes another household becomes homeless. On average, every day another 45 kids becomes homeless. So this council can have the opportunity to say publicly to its residents and to the rest of the country, enough is enough. Solutions can and must be found. And here in Edinburgh, where the housing emergency is at its most severe, I would say to you, people can't wait any longer.